So today I want to talk about joy and like these new discoveries I've been making. So let's tune in for a second. Everyone, want to get comfortable and relax. This is really exciting. I think this is groundbreaking. It occurred to me, and I want to practice giving it words. So please shout out if something I say is something that's also been occurring to you, and I'm really interested in hearing what your experience has been with it. And feel free to ask questions, whatever. We'll just have some fun. All right. So here's what came to me today. Let's say that you have like this trauma. And so this is like the trauma behind you. And so at this point in time, the moment, this is really the only opportunity you have to affect the experience of your life, just this moment. Because everything outside of the moment, like behind it and in front of it, hasn't happened yet. And so all you really have is this moment. This is experience. This is your life, this moment. What's interesting is that the mind tells us how to interpret the moment. Here's where I think we're going to break some ground. It seems like there are really only two sensations, two signals. One that, or it's not even signals, it's like just two experiences. One experience is like, yes, everything's working out for me. And it doesn't even have to be everything's working out for me. It can just be okay. And then the second one is like, no, this is not okay. This is wrong. That's it. At the moment, the only decision that you ever have available is to say, okay, I'll fucks with this, or no, this is wrong. And how do you know if you're saying, no, this is wrong? You feel bad. You feel terrible. That's it. How crazy. So that's okay. So that's how this whole thing rolls up. There are two tracks. Yes and no. On, off. That negate completely everything and anything else that's ever happened to you. Wait, what? Yeah, check me out. Here's my theory. So, I've been in this space for evs. All I fucking do is this work. You can go back and like retool your mind relative to the trauma or the shit that doesn't work. Or instead, you can attune yourself or practice becoming more present to the moment and just noticing, is your switch on? Yes, I will fucks with life. Or is your switch off? No, this is wrong. How do you know? Because if you feel good, then you've got the on. And if you feel bad, you've got the off. This is one of those big power things. Which basically means that you don't have to worry about undoing all the stuff that was wrong. You only have to learn how to allow yourself to frame what's happening in a way that makes you feel okay about it. Over time, you will accumulate enough evidence, safety, and belief that all of the stuff that's behind you that you thought you'd have to move through first is just kind of like, okay, I know this is a big claim, so let's look at it in practice. So let's say that one of the experiences you've had is a shortage in cash or some other resource. It would make you very aware of that experience in a way that you are practically saying all of the time, no, I don't want this to happen again. So no matter what you are doing, it's basically saying, no, not this, which is the same thing as saying this exists. It's kind of trippy, so stay with me. At any given time, so let's say you've got like an ice cream cone. You could be saying, yes, I want an ice cream cone, or you could be saying, no, I don't want the ice cream cone. No is relative to the ice cream cone. If you don't want anything to do with the ice cream cone, then say yes to something else. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like the concept of like, don't think about a pink elephant. If you're saying no, not pink elephant, you're still effectively saying pink elephant. So in this model, you're saying like, okay, I'm not going to say no to this. I'm going to say yes to something else. So tying this back to the money example, what I'm saying is like, we get these patterns. We learn these ways to adapt that are basically like, if I think really hard about that problem always and all the time, it'll go away. But Fox, does that work? Did that work for you? Does that work for you? If no, it's because it's still active in your vibration. You're saying, no, not that, anything but that. And by saying, no, not that, you are saying that. And so in this model that I'm presenting, where it's like just about being present in the moment, it's leveraging your ability to choose a different thought. And that had been sort of like offensive to me before, because it's like, well, what do you mean I choose another thought? Like, this is what when you really look at thinking, it's like spend some time with thinking. I think I say this every time I present, but if you haven't examined your ability, and not just yours, but everyone's ability to think accurately, then like do it. It's so funny because you find that you can't think at all accurately. You just can't, because everything is relative to your personal perspective. So let's say like I'm really smart. I'm an NASA scientist. And not only that, I'm very aware and I try my best and I move through life and stuff happens and I see something and I say, this happened, and I wrote it down. But let's say I only saw half of it. And so what I wrote down as the complete event is only half. But I'm like, yo, this has happened. This is what's real. And I build my world out around this idea of what's real, but it's only half. And this is kind of what we do whenever we take in information. Let's say I have a shitty day, and then I sit down and I have a conversation with my business partner, and my business partner tells me something that's a neutral sentence. They're like, here's this neutral idea. But because I had a shitty day and I'm sensitive, I hear it, and the way I record it is, this person doesn't know what they're talking about. And so the next time I interact with them from that place. But that's not real. That's just the way I recorded it. And so we get all of these thoughts, all these understandings, all these interpretations that we try to use to minimize our experience of pain. But they're useless, essentially. Or let's say like less useful than allowing yourself the opportunity to make a decision relative to the information that's present rather than the information that is not there. It's like, okay, so when you lose your mind, if you lose your mind, you'll know what I'm talking about. But like there is, let's say like let's say you have a partner, and you and your partner are working through something, and you have your conversation and you say blah 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 blah, and then let's say one of you is not happy with what the conversation was, and so you go this way. Let's follow the person's like internal dialogue. Over here, it's like this, the conversation, although it has ended, continues in the head, and while it's up here, all kinds of stuff's added. And so you build out this character. Now you start to see this other person, not just from what occurred, which was you already recorded in a way that was impoverished, but now you're building out these additional qualities just because you're having this fake conversation in your head. And so you're like, I'm upset that you said that back in my fake conversation. And so now I'm even madder at you and blah. And so now you have this idea of this person that's so far from the person. It's like, wait, what? So you get these concepts and these like distorted realities in your mind, and you start to think that those are real. And then you make decisions based on these instead of what's outside. And that's when shit goes wrong. And it seems like the more that we distinguish reality, the more that we conceptualize and think about things, the further they are from their natural expression. And so rather than tend to them naturally, in this whole, like the weave of everything is so intricate and beautiful and complete. Like when you pull it out and start to work with it in isolation, you lose what it is because nothing exists in isolation. And I know this is all sort of like esoteric, a little challenging to follow, but the idea, coming back to this like solution that's present, is like, yo, you don't have to approach life from a position of I can't, because that very idea is just an idea. It's sort of saying like, look, I live in this moment, which is basically like, this is the totality of my experience, is just this one experience right now. How do I feel right now? And when we try to collapse our modern life to that concept, it's like, I hear you, but there is an electric bill coming, and there is my mom that's sick, and there's all this stuff. And I'm not saying like those situations don't exist. I'm saying in this exact moment, you only have one choice. Do you think about it in a way that lifts your spirit up, or do you think about it in a way that pulls your spirit down? And from those two vantage points, like your life expands. And it seems bad or wrong to think about negative things that are happening in a way that allows for your experience to lift. But this, when you examine the alternative, this doesn't do shit. This, for some reason, became popularized as a way to respond, but in essence and actuality, I'd say even like specifics, it really doesn't do shit. In fact, it actually makes everything worse. So if you're just joining, what I was talking about was at the moment, the entry point of the moment, we have an opportunity to override all patterns, which basically means stop solving and fixing ourselves, if only we allow for the possibility that through just the leadership of our focus, all of these patterns will kind of clean up over time. So there's so much that goes into allowing for this to even be true because of all of the stuff in our minds. So we might have ideas around worth, and we might have been taught that unless you're not busting your ass, like you're not really working, or you don't really care, or you're not really trying. However, when you look at the things that you're probably best at, or where you have excelled the most, one, you probably don't even notice you're that great at it because it's so natural to you and you've never experienced the not. Two, it's probably like, even let's say like it is something that you recognize as a characteristic or an activity you've taken on. It's probably really easy for you. Like what we're great at is actually really easy for us. And for some reason, this idea of it being hard just like kind of is there, where it's like, if let's say like if you're not forcing it, or if you're not efforting, then it says something about you. But does it? So the point of this conversation is really to introduce the idea that joy and all systems being like prosperous and wonderful is a function of one continuous choice made over time. And it sounds really challenging to allow yourself the freedom to, you have to be hyper vigilant. You become a watchdog inside, and you're just kind of like, there's this conveyor belt of thoughts, and you're standing at the conveyor belt, and some of the thoughts look like shit because they make you feel like shit. And so your job is to just like let them be on the conveyor belt and look for the ones that feel good and to choose them. And basically, I know it sounds so like this is basically law of attraction, but there was a hump that I couldn't overcome, and accepting the simplicity of it, because worth and hard work were inexplicably tied for me, where it's like, if I'm not working hard, I don't deserve things to be good. If I'm not struggling, if I'm not special, I don't deserve for things to be good. But that's not how it is at all. The ideas of like worth are ideas from what? I know this is all stuff kind of beyond the mind, and I'm having a little difficulty fitting it into words. But what keeps coming to me like energetically is this concept like easy peasy lemon squeezy, which is like, yo, like what if it was easy? Why does it gotta be hard? Why does the adventure have to hurt? What if it didn't? And it doesn't mean that there's not discomfort. It doesn't mean that there's not pain. It just means that at that point you're choosing to interpret what's occurring in a way that lifts your spirit up rather than pulls your spirit down. And what's so crazy is like, let's say that you are choosing interpretations or meanings that pull you down, and you're like, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this, but I'm doing this and I can't stop. And if you say, that's okay, it's okay that I'm doing this, oh wow, it like turns it right upside down. So you can't lose. Like, you really don't have to fight yourself on the process at all. And as far as like healing or cleaning up, it seems like all the work that really needs to be done is just target practice, where the target is just being hyper vigilant to how you feel. If you feel good, great. Like whatever script is running, let it go. If you feel shitty, interrupt the script and say like, okay, what conclusions have I made that are making me feel that life is hopeless? What meaning am I assigning that's bringing my heart down? Why do I feel closed off or constricted? And if you just practice that vigilance, then everything else, like, as far as I can tell, and peeps, I've been in this, like, I have been searching. Like, I put my whole life in this. And it's so easy. Fuck. So, what I find is that the areas that we think the most are the areas with the most problems. And we think that we have to think about them the most because they have the most problems, but they have the most problems because we think about them. And don't believe me, like, do your own research in your own labs, which basically means set up an experiment in your life. Choose something like, okay, this thing really bothers me. When you notice that it bothers you because of the meanings that you assign to it, you're already freed a little bit, because that means you don't have to wait for the problem to solve itself. It only means that you have to change your experience, your moment-to-moment experience of the problem, which is just a situation that you have called by name. So that basically means that you don't have to wait until your body is a certain way, or your bank account is a certain way, or your relationships are a certain way. You look at all the shit that is, and you say, wow, this must be fucking perfect. This must be amazing, because this is what's happening. And when you start saying yes to everything, then everything starts saying yes to you. And this is like what everybody in the space has concluded, ultimately, I think, except for there's a trap of the individual story where we think that, thank you guys for the compliments, thank you, where we think that we have to do something. So when we go back to this identity concept, we get kind of like hot on the idea that look at me fixing my mind, look at me doing this. But it's not that you're doing it, you're just allowing it. And it's not that you worked really hard, it's just that you think that because you work really hard, you deserve it, and so then it arrives. But you don't have to do that. You can just allow. And if it's not present yet, then you look at the moment and you say, well, it must be coming then. And then you change your spiral from down to up because you're not resisting what's happening. And this This is where freedom is. It's just this one dot in the center. It's not a place. It's not a set of circumstances. It's not a physical condition. It's not a resource condition, because all that shit can change. All you have access to at any given moment is the feeling, or the thought rather, that guides your experience to, wow, this is going in a great direction, or this is going to hell. And if you can train yourself over time to pay attention to how you feel, and to start to choose meanings that lift you up no matter what's happening, you just say, my favorite meaning ever is like, well, this must be perfect. And what the fuck do I know? Going back to the idea of thinking requires, or thinking presupposes that we can understand, but we can't. The complexity of everything is so much that even if we looked at all of history and we said, based on these things happened, this, because of this conclusion is impossible, because the system is so wide. And like, yes, okay, maybe these things fit this narrative, but was everything included in the story? Can everything be included in the story? And it seems like no. The answer is always no. So it's almost like freedom to allow your mind to relax and say, look, I'm not going to understand this. So what can I do? And you know where you get information about what you can do? When you're relaxed and you feel good. And then you get these ideas and you're like, well, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that. And it doesn't have to be the idea that solves the problem. It could just be the idea that's the next step towards where you're going. Because remember, problems are only called problems because we call them problems, because we think things should be different than they are, but they just are. And it is the language around the thing that holds it in place as a problem. Boom. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, which basically means that as you move through life, start to consider, what if I could let this be easy? What would be the value in that? Would I find something to do? Would I be able to entertain and stimulate myself enough if this was easy? If I wasn't kicking my own ass, if I wasn't miserable, what would I do? What would life be like? And what's really interesting, to me anyhow, is that when I first started out presenting and doing this work, I didn't know how broken I was as a human. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to talk to people that want to iterate their success. If they want to go from like this level of awesome to that level of awesome. But I've been through some shit. And what really lights me up and like what's really beautiful is there is this experience that's unfathomable if you haven't had it. And it's called wholeness. And it basically means you're not afraid for your life. You have enough love, enough money, enough safety, enough security, enough everything, and you're good. Unless you've experienced this, you don't know. And unless you've experienced what that's not, you don't know. And very few people have got to have had the experience to have both. Because if you're in this place, after being in this place, you're generally afraid still of this. So to be wholly this and know only this, or to be wholly this and know only this, it's almost like the other doesn't, it's like you can only, it's either one or the other. But it seems like if you lose your mind, you can hold both experiences. And there is this delight in living that exists here that, again, it's like unfathomable unless you have tasted it. And what really is beautiful, I think, is to bring the people that have felt so much pain and have suffered and not seen light and not been let up. Like, can you imagine what it would be like to be here? All the good you could do if you weren't worried. If you were on the right path and you didn't have to consider if things were wrong, if you weren't fighting in your relationships, if you were healthy, if you didn't have to worry about money, if you were in that place and had all those things and you could and knew what you knew, knowing that there were people, I'm gonna cry, but there are people still stuck down here. Like, what could you do? think of like the possibilities. It's like fucking amazing. But it's not that you'd have to. It's just like, it might be cool. So anyhow, what I'm saying is like there's this space that exists below wholeness that is beautiful in its own right. But it's not that, it doesn't have to be like that. There is another way. And it seems like the only way to do that is through allowing for the possibility to become present in the mind. So through visualization, like just pretending, or even just practicing this enough. If you practice saying like, okay, this feels good, I'm going to do what feels good. If you practice that enough, then this would occur naturally. But it's so amazing to consider, like, wow, like all of these people who have been through so much stuff, who don't know what it's like to live without being like under the thumb of some kind of fear. Like, if you weren't under that thumb anymore, who could you be? What would you do? It's just like really so beautiful. Okay, so I just wanted to start practicing talking about this. The idea is really like joy, and that being your, again, I'm not saying anything brand new. This is like Joseph Campbell, Follow Your Bliss, Esther Hicks, Abraham Hicks, like do what feels good. But there is like this, I think from a behavioral standpoint, when you recognize and allow for this to be a practice where you're just kind of like, it's like stuff that feels good, and your mind has so much practice thinking about stuff that doesn't feel good. And rather than looking at when it's off and saying, this is wrong, which is again judgment, when everything's perfect, you say, I did it again. That's okay. Of course I did it again. I've practiced this way of thinking so much. Of course I'm doing that. That's okay. I'll try again. Oh, that's okay, I'm doing it again. Oh, I'll never do it. But I guess it is getting a little bit easier than it was before, so I'll try again. And I'll try again. And you allow for it to be real. You're just practicing, just like you would practice any other skill. You're not going to get it overnight. And it's okay. It's okay. But I can tell you, like, personally, like, this place of peace exists. And it's sustainable. And when you're there, everything's possible. And you see things in a way that's like, wow, like, oh my God. And you don't need anything to be perfect because it already is. Your experience of it is perfect. And I know that, again, like if you've been in a position where you've been fighting to survive for a while, this idea is really foreign. But like, I really, like, if you can set up an experiment and try, like, let me know how it works, or if you need any help putting it together, like, I'm happy to do that. But there's freedom. It feels like freedom. When all of the pressures of the world, all of the guilt, all the shame, all of the stuff that you're afraid that you'll get wrong, all the stuff that you feel like you already did get wrong, all the stuff you lost that you felt bad about, there's freedom from all of it. And it's like accessible all the time. It's crazy. So on Thursday night, I'm hosting a lovely woman named Solange and her accompanist at the Space Hub Lounge, and they will be singing or performing a few songs for us. And then there's a discussion around joy where I'll ask each individual to just share a few thoughts about about their individuality, which I think is in it. It's just like it's part of the joy component where you're making decisions. Like when I'm talking about being an individual or unique, I'm talking about making decisions relative to what feels good to you, like your own navigation system, where it's like, this feels good to me, rather than I think I should do this, or it should look like this, or it's just like, it feels good to me. And that to me is individuality, which is really just an honoring of your inborn guidance system, and seeing if we can create a container or an environment where people feel comfortable experimenting with that as a way of being, because it does run counter to the way that we've talked about success in society before. And it's not to say that way was wrong, it's just saying, like, I don't know if that story is complete. And so I'm just kind of opening up the discussion and sharing what I found, and inviting everyone to, like, find their own truths and explore their own worlds in a way that makes life feel, like, pretty amazing. And, like, if you haven't had the experience of waking up in the morning and being like, fuck yeah, here I go, it's one of those things you can't really fathom, but it's pretty beautiful. And having also had the experience where you wake up and you're like, oh God, like, again, like, here we go. It doesn't have to be that way. It's like there is this whole other, it's like the two sides of the coin, and it's a really easy thing to flip, or rather it's a really simple thing to learn how to turn over, but it just takes some practice. And if you don't know, oh, thanks for coming in, Phil. I say this all the time, but really, like, engage with each other in here, because I'm fortunate to know lots of cool peeps. Oh, if you are interested in Jazz Night, send me a message and I will send you the link to RSVP. I'm opening it up to the public this month in honor of having our first live performer. And yes, so I do coach. I think everybody knows that now. So haveitbook.com is my business, and I help kind of bridge that gap from, it's like, the way things were to the way things could be through structure, just basically like daily thinking exercises that are really seamless and easy, that you don't even realize you're doing it, because I'm a ninja. Not really. It's mostly that I'm just practiced and hearing what other people say, so then it makes it easy to respond and do the things, set it up and stuff, because it's like attuned to exactly where you are, so it doesn't feel like a stretch, it doesn't feel like it hurts, it's just because it's just the next step, and that's growth, and that's aliveness, and that's sort of like what joy is as well. It's living, it's growing, it's being. And when we stand apart from the process and we look at what needs to be done, we are reviewing the thing in time, and in time there's like tension, and in the tension there's discomfort, and then there is a hesitancy to move forward because we are perceiving this thing to be impossible or uncomfortable, when really it's very natural in the next, and just easily the next step. So what I'm encouraging everyone to do is really fucks around in your own life and create experiments where you can see where, if it's possibly true that this is also like your gateway to joy and what as well, which is beyond the mind of judgment. Nate, what up? Okay, that concludes my business chat for today. And now I can just tell jokes. Does anyone have anything they want to talk about? No. Okay. Let's see. Do I have anything I want to talk about? Oh man, I'm so happy you're here. I'm gonna read. What I talked about today was how ironic and seemingly impossible it is that moment to moment we have one switch accessible to us that either turns our experience positively. So I think of it as a spiral. So it either spirals it up or it spirals it down. And it's kind of like this, I sort of see like this big, like a big breaker on the wall, and the breaker's either on, yes, this is happening, this must be okay, or no, this is wrong. And the no, this is wrong might not stand out as like that part, like that exact language in your mind. You might not be shouting it the way that I'm shouting it. Instead, you might be experiencing it like, oh, I should be over there. How do I get over there? How do I get over there? How do I change this? How do I be different? How does this happen? Why isn't this happening? And so that might actually be what your no switch sounds like. And what I'm suggesting is experimenting with allowing yourself to think whatever you have to think to allow you to say okay or yes to the situation. And I always probably till I die or whatever, suggest, if you haven't considered the limits of thinking, do. If you have a very active mind, I highly suggest that before you think much about anything else, think about thinking and see what's there. When I've done that, I found that understanding is impossible, and so all the work I do or did to try to understand is useless because I can't. The way that I record information, the way that I revisit information, the way that I hear information is all limited. And so I'm playing with like a short deck. And so even if I arrange the cards really beautifully, I'm still missing them, which is great if I want to approximate anything. But when I look at why I would do that even to begin with, it would be an attempt to control external circumstances, which is also impossible. And really what I'm trying to do is minimize my experience of pain, which actually is just a fucked up way to say I'd like to be happy. And so if I'd like to be happy, what can I do? Well, I have that moment-to-moment switch. And oh yeah, over time, if I'm making decisions with my switch up, they're of a higher quality than if my switch is down. And oh yeah, if I make better quality decisions over time, my life builds out in a way that's like, wow, this is kind of nice. And it really wasn't that hard because I just did it moment by moment. And I recognized that even if I didn't do a good job, that was okay. I would flip my switch up to that and be like, well, that's okay. And that's like the most, if I can give you something, it would be the freedom to mess up, because the idea of messing up is still just an idea. It's a thought relative to an arbitrary concept or construct. And the thing itself doesn't make you feel bad. It's the ideas around the thing. And if you didn't know any better, you'd probably be okay with it. And if you really look at the process of growing and learning, that's very natural in it. It's so crazy. We beat the shit out of ourselves for no reason. It's so crazy. And I'm not sure. I think the magnitude of my own internal discomfort might be on like the high end of the bell curve. So when I'm talking about like this, it's I guess it may possibly feel or seem more extreme than your own experience, which is like very possible. And in that case, I'd say like, do you? I don't know. I guess what I'm just saying, like, my personal experience was such that the internal tension was very high, which led to either just a lot of dissociation and a lot of just this discomfort of always never feeling like at peace. And it doesn't register as like I'm not at peace. It registers as like I can't be here because I need to think about how I'm going to get over there. How am I going to make that happen? How am I going to fix that? What if I could get it like that? And it's not just about external circumstances. It's very much about the inside world as well. And so we have this awareness of the things external, and we're like, okay, I'll learn how to manage these things. And then we become aware of the inside world, and we're like, okay, then I'll manage these things. And it's like this attempt at control, again, to minimize the experience of pain based on what we saw from in a limited data set. So it's like we walked down the street once and there was a ghost and we got scared. And then every street we walked down, we're afraid of, but it was just one situation that's like expanded outward. And if your situation was chronic and it was in your childhood, then like good luck. It's like good luck trying to see clearly, because you can't. And so, and that basically, by that I mean, no matter what's happening, your poor brain, like my heart goes to you, because like I know, is interpreting what's happening as, oh, fuck, this is wrong. And maybe that means you feel discomfort in your shoulder and you're like, oh, fuck, my shoulder's broke. Maybe it means somebody didn't answer your text and you think, oh, fuck, they're mad at me. Maybe I'm saying, oh, fuck a lot, but maybe it's like, maybe there's just, it doesn't matter what's happening. Your brain is applying this interpretation that makes you feel bad. And unless you have not had that experience, you don't know that there's another one, but there is. It doesn't have to be that way. And the way that you retrain your mind is just by looking for what feels good. And you can do that if your mind is really strong and holding on for dear life, then it's probably hesitant to let go of thinking about things. And so you say, that's okay, mind. Like, I'm here with you, boo. Let's work through this together. Like, let's do this. And you say, you want to work really hard. So like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you something. I want you to think about thinking. I really want to get to know this. Like, let's see what thinking is. And that will free you. I'm telling you, there's this peace that exists. And it's fucking glorious. And I tried everything outside and inside. And it seems like this is... Here you go. I'm going to put it on a pop. So the bottom half of the bun is pumpernickel. And it's on a toothpick. I love you, girl. Check out her work. It's amazing. She does some really powerful jewelry and accessory and flair and snazzy pieces. Yes, okay. The moral of the story is your mind is lying, and that's okay. You don't have to be mad at it. It's trying its best. Eric, it just basically means that if you can become aware of when it's spinning in a way that makes you feel bad, you can start to practice interrupting it and saying like, hey, that's great. That's a great story. It doesn't feel that great. So, while you're talking, can you actually talk about it from this perspective instead? So rather than us looking at this thing meaning and reading it as an indication that the ship is going to sink, what if we read it as that this might be excellent preparation for something that's next? If I wasn't fighting what's happening here, what information could I take in that would refine my understanding, not even understanding, would refine my ability to appreciate? It seems like our attunement to details is really more a reflection, or let's say like our capacity or our inclination to notice is really an appreciation rather than control. And again, like, I'm the first bitch to be like, nah, like, I would never, ever, 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 ever have surrendered control, which is why I was pried from my hands. All that was like, oh, this one thinks she's going to get it from the inside. This one thinks she'll, and so I lost everything. Like, it's crazy. So being on the other side, I can hopefully save you the trip and suggest that if you're curious about this stuff, allow yourself the freedom to experiment with having one focus only, which is minding basically the spout inside from which thought flows. And if the thought that's flowing past is saying anything that makes you feel like a somewhat deflated balloon, pick something else. Focus on anything else. It could be, you could have a go-to thought, like your go-to thought could actually be your go-to about your go-to shirt. Whatever it is that makes you giggle and lighten up a little bit until that sensation passes. And again, one of the I'd say like this is like next level ninja moves is you can accept your non-acceptance, which then kind of like rectifies the disconnect. So it's like, I'm I'm feeling all types of ways. My head is running 1,000,000 miles a second and it's saying all kinds of shit. And I hear it and I can't stop it. But I'm going to say maybe this is perfect. Maybe it's okay that I'm overthinking. Maybe this is perfect. Maybe this internal tension is a perfect setup for what's next. So what if I wasn't scared of it? What if I thought maybe it was okay that I was really anxious? If this was okay, if I let this be okay, then what? And that, my friends, is freedom. You can't make this shit up. Well, you can, I guess. I don't know. Find your own truth. From the lab, this is what I see, where one doesn't have to clean up all of one's pain. One can just practice here. And if you just practice here, then everything else cleans up itself. Yes, maybe this terrifying borderline panic is great. Yeah, look, I wouldn't believe that, except that I've allowed for it in my own experience, and every time I relax, it's like this new level is like birthed, and it seems like, again, okay, this is trippy, hold on. So you know those Play-Doh machines? If you're a boy, maybe not, but they're like, or I don't want to genderize. I don't know, maybe you know what I'm talking about, but they're like these Play-Doh mold presses where you can make like spaghetti or like baby doll hair or something. And what I found is that our minds have these two slots, and so no matter what experience we're reviewing, outside or inside, we push it through and it splits into these two things, and we call one good and we call one bad. But it was the same piece of fucking Play-Doh that we split in half, and it is only through contemplation that we even think we know what these things are, but we can't because of the limits of understanding I talked about earlier. And so whenever you are working through a situation and you're saying like, this is bad, remember that it's only bad because you're thinking about it. This is duality. This is an option that you can drop. So it's like, basically everything that comes out, you don't have to solve. It only comes out in two pieces because it went through your mind. Boom. You know? That's what I'm saying. And so basically that means you don't have to solve your thoughts anymore. You just have to notice it's a thought. And because it's a thought, it's this. It's cool. You're good. It's good. That's all I've got. Thanks so much for the commentary, peeps. Thinking about thinking absolutely helps because my brain doesn't actually know what will make me happy. It's all just guessing. Yeah, our brains have like such I can't even like. Oh, bye Phil, thanks for stopping in. Yeah, Play-Doh's the best. I think there seems to be like a correlation between how much mental anxiety we have and also like what creative ability. It's almost like, it seems like when I went back before and I pointed out that appreciation of details was kind of a function, or like it's like another way to look at people who are good at controlling stuff. Because if you're good at controlling stuff, you take in a lot of details in the environment, but you could also be really good at appreciating it. And if you're good at appreciating it, if you look at it rather, instead of trying to like control it, it's like what makes it beautiful. And if you can hold it in a way that's like it's almost like having a really fine tipped pen. So if you're mind is really active, it means that you have like a lot of pixels, and so it's actually to your advantage. And so this is where we come back again to like, maybe this is perfect. And so if your mind has been really like chattery in a way that overshadows your ability to enjoy what's happening, it's like, oh great, like that means I have a lot of horsepower, that means I have a lot of like access here. And it's working with it, always working with it. Yes and spaghetti Play-Doh, anyone? I'm in. All right, thanks so much for coming. So I have been putting content like this on patreon.com/habitbook. There's been about a week and a half lull. I've been off grid. I like kind of drop out of time. I don't know if this happens to anyone else, but I'm learning how to manage that and lead it, love it, etc. Love yours, boo. And let it be perfect. And as I do that, it seems like being on the ground is more accessible. And this is kind of what I'm saying. Like, we have all these ideas about who we are and how we should be, and yet we're probably like perfect as we are. And so I think a lot of like the people I interact with as X-Men, because it's like usually there is some like traumatic like experience or pain, or like this like seemingly insurmountable obstacle, but all of that actually has shaped the person in a way that they can do really incredible things. And it's just relaxing enough to stop fighting like whatever that might be. Maybe it's ADHD or dyslexia or bipolar or a loss of someone. If you can allow for all of those things to be and really say yes and see what's there, it's pretty incredible. It seems like our worst or our biggest liabilities are also like our greatest assets. It's just a function of environment or context. I used all my words. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks for the shout out, Nate. Jazz night on Thursday at 8 p.m. EST in the Zoom room. It should be quite lovely. We have Solange Saria performing with her accompanist Nick Tenora, and they'll do a set at the beginning of the evening, and then we'll have a conversation where everyone can share a little bit about what they have, if they want, about their experience of bliss or joy and peace, and just kind of get a feel for where everyone else is. In the video rooms I've hosted before, it's really nice to allow, it's just nice to, no matter what people say or what they don't say, you can kind of feel them, and there's just a really beautiful harmony of the people that seem to come into my space, and it's just nice to know about each other. So hopefully you can make it. Send me a message if you're interested. Thank you so much for coming out. I love you. Bye.